to the cloud. Okay. Alrighty. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is how to use flow along surface to create an interesting ring. The first thing we're going to do is we created a surface here. And the way we did this was we just did an extrude using the gumball. Hang on. Oh. Hold on. Let's undo this whole. Let me delete that. We used gumball. We took this little ball and just drug it up a little bit. And that's how we made this surface. But this surface is not printable. As you probably know, it has no volume. It's not solid. It is just a surface. So by using the create UV command, create UV curve, we hit enter, and it says select points and curves on a surface. We clicked on this surface, we hit enter, and now you see Rhino created this this curve. It's a closed curve. And what this curve represents is the approximate area of this surface here. So I'm going to make this into a surface as well. And I can use a command under the surface menu called planar curves. And it created a surface right there. Let me go with not rendered. Oh, ghosted. Here we go. So you can see that we have two surfaces now, one that's shaped like a ring and one that's like that ring, but it's flattened out. Great. So now we're going to use, I'm going to just do a basic sphere. Just going to make a center radius. And I'm going to do this over here. I'm going to just make a little sphere. Let me edit it a little bit over here. I'm going to do that, maybe just make it into sort of an ellipse. Now I'm going to use the array command. We did just use that in our exercise last week. So in the X direction, let's make it about 12. Now in the Y direction, so the X direction's here. The Y direction is here. So the Y direction, let's do 3. And the Z direction, that's if we look over here in this viewport, it is here. So we only want one layer of these. So we're going to keep that Z at 1. We hit enter, and now it's asking me for the unit or cell spacing. And what I'm doing is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to start to move out. And you see now it is creating all of these. And, you know, like I said, we did do this last week, but all right. So now I've got all these little nubbies, you know, we'll call them little balls, donut holes. That's what they are. So if we wanted to, actually, let's take the whole thing and use gumball and make them relate more to that surface that we have here, right? I'm going to actually do this because we can scale things with gumball. I'm just going to slide them right over this surface. And now what's going to happen here is we're going to take all of these. I'm going to drag from right towards the left, and I'm only touching the tops of these in order to select them, but not select the surface underneath. And now I'm going to start the flow along surface command. Okay, flow along surface. You can see it in the menu there. Now it's asking me, because I already had these selected, it's asking me to select the base surface and select an edge near a corner. So I'm going to go right here. And that's the surface that I created from this. And so now it's asking me in the command line to go to the target surface. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on the bottom right here. And what this did is it moved them all the way around, as you can see. Because it was sticking out a little on either end, they overlapped a little. So, and this is kind of a fun way to create an interesting ring with some texture. So these are still separate items. At this point, I would need to create them and make a solid. So I could go like this. I'll want to deselect with control click that surface in the middle. Where's it at? there it is. I took it off. One surface removed. So now I'm going to put that back on. I could go Boolean union. Let's see if it works. Ah, it failed. Imagine that. Undo. It's not surprising. What might be a good idea to do is to union all these before I get there. The other option I can do is, let's undo this, is I could take some of these and make them different sizes. You know, we'll create a little bit of visual interest here. Let's go there. Let's make that one a little bigger too. Or maybe a little smaller, that one. Let's take this one, make that a little bigger. Okay, now I'm going to select, well, actually, let's start the command and do it again. Flow along surface. Hey, and remember, if I have the help, if I have my help panel up and I'm doing, oh, goodness me, flow along surface, it'll give me hints about the command. See, we've got a little thing here. It says flow along surface, and then it puts it on here. So we've got options here, and I'll show you some of them. So flow along, it says now it wants me to select those objects I'm going to flow. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to drag from right to left. I'm just going to touch the little surfaces. I'll hit enter. Now, base surface. Copy. Yes, I do want to copy them. Rigid. Let's not keep them rigid. Plane, constrain normals, auto adjust, preserve structure. No, that's why they were able to bend around that. So we're going to keep all of those controls in that way. So I'm going to hit, oh, I forgot to hit the target surface and the base surface. Let's do it again. So I'm going to select these. I'm going to right click. And now we got to hit the target surface or the base surface. And now the way that I did it before was I hit the bottom edge here. And let's see. So we've got a couple that are a little fatter. To be honest, it's not a bad looking ring. It's not a great looking ring, but you know, there we go. So what you would probably do then is start to union these together. One thing that's really important when you're Boolean unioning a lot of things together is to keep an eye on your edges. So I'm just going to Boolean union these, not all of them. And it worked. I can tell because the command line says creating meshes. So if I click on these, they're all one piece now. Now, before we get any further, we're going to type in show edges. And what it says here is it has 19 edges, no naked edges, no non-manifold edges. Great. So I'm going to keep this edge analysis up. I'm going to actually move it over here to the side. And we're just going to keep adding more surfaces. Going there. Here's the Boolean union command over here. And there we go. It worked again. Before we go any further, we're going to add those objects. Again, I'm looking up here, no naked edges. Great. So we would keep moving. This is the prudent way to do things when you're using Boolean union. Okay, there. Oh, no, we didn't want that surface. Get rid of that surface. Nope. So to deselect things, remember, command click. All righty, so there we go. And I could just go around and keep checking the objects. All right, so this is one way you can build a ring. And you can do all kinds of things over here with what you flow along your ring. What's another way we can build things? I was talking to Eiley about doing a blob ring. So right now we're gonna call this array. Where's my layers? They disappeared. Oh no, there they are. Okay. We're just gonna call this array flow ring. And I am gonna put all this stuff here. Except, yeah, actually, let's do that. Except for that. I'm gonna hide the ring reference. And now we're going to select everything and move it all to that green layer so that I can hide it and still keep my work. Okay, now we'll work on the blue layer. But now let's bring our ring back up. So suppose I wanted something more interesting than just those silly ellipses. In the SubD menu, we've got options for working a little differently than we've been learning up until this point. One way that you can start working in SubD is to bring up just a box. All right. And now you can see that this box is not got very sharp corners or sharp edges. It looks kind of like just a marshmallow cube, right? So if you bring up the SubD tools toolbar here, and you can find that right here, that is where you're going to find ways to edit this. Now we can edit it just like other pieces with Gumball if we're just working with the whole thing. But if we wanted to really create some interesting stuff with this, we can do it by editing. There are 3 parts to a SubD, to each part of a SubD. One are faces, and I'm going to click right here, and I've got my selection filter up too. By the way, I'm going to park that right here because I love my selection filter, and it tells me what I'm able to select right now. So if I choose faces and I click on a face, you see how it just selects part of it. I can use Gumball here to move it around, to scale it, to change its size in relation to the rest of the cube. And one other really kind of interesting thing that I can do is I can use Gumball to extrude. You see that little ball that I used to create the surface earlier? If I push out with that, it creates a whole new loop of faces. And now I have this protrusion that I just made. And that's one of the cool things about SubD is you can append the form by editing the pieces of the form that you have. So if I wanted to, I could select this form. I can do it again. And there we go. We've got, actually, I just pulled it out. I didn't actually extrude it. If I extrude it, I got to grab this little, and you see how I have another set of these, they look like isocurves that we use in Rhino, but now I can actually edit those by clicking here where it says edges. In SubD, you can edit these edges, just like I could do with the faces using Gumball. I can also do the same thing with edges. I can move these edges. I can zoom them. I can scale them. I can just drag them around using Gumball. So I have a face. I have faces that I can edit. I have edges that I can edit. If I double click on an edge, I can get the whole thing all the way around an edge loop. I can scale that using Gumball. And then the third component of a SubD is the vertices. And the vertices is where the edges come together. They are these little intersections, and they're just like points. And we can use, again, the Gumball to create these, to refine our form in a way that we want. And all this just started with a cube. Now, if I want to use this with my NURBS geometry, the stuff that I make with surfaces and solids in Rhino, I have to move this back to a NURBS piece. So up here in my selection filter, I'm going to turn on SubD. I'm going to turn off sub-objects. This is really important. If you have sub-objects on when you're working with NURBS, it's going to seem like you can't select anything as a whole. So we're going to shut that off. And now you see how edges, vertices, and faces disappeared right next to our points, curves, and surfaces. If I turn on sub-objects, there we go, points, vertices, curves, objects. So this is, sub-objects is super helpful for working in SubD. It can also work for Rhino, but we don't need to get into that right now. So I'm turning off sub objects. I'm going to click on this SubD and I'm going to change it back to NURBS. So to NURBS. Okay. And I'm not going to worry about the options. We're going to delete it. So this way, wow, look at all that crazy, all those isocurves now that we have. You can really create some much more dynamic forms more easily using SubD than it would have been hard to create this form using curves and sweep 2 or network surface or any of the surface or solid editing geometry techniques that we've learned up to this point. So I'm gonna and polysurfaces is off, so I'm going to delete that. And let's go back to SubD here and create a torus. Now a torus is a donut, right? Let's just go and we're going to start that in the center here using my ring size. And here we go. So that's pretty close. So now, because this is a SubD, I can use this to create my ring. And I can use these, I'll go to faces or I'll go to vertices. And you see, I still have my, my selection filter up. I love my selection filter. So I'm going to work in edges right now. I'm going to double click here. We're going to pull that up a tiny bit. I'm going to now go to vertices. And I'm going to make this like a, I'm going to use my 4 viewports. What I wanted to do was use vertices here. And we're going to take those. And the vertices happen at the intersections. Whoop, I didn't mean to do that. Pull up. The vertices happen at the intersections of the edges, right? They're at the corners of the faces. So I could do this with faces, or I could do this with the edges, but this is what I'm going to do. Now, if I wanted some extra geometry in here, I could click on a face and I could subdivide it. That's this here, creates 4 spots there. Now I can maybe take one of those faces and drag it out this way. But you can see that this is just a slightly different way of working. And I'd like you to play with it a little bit if you get a chance. But remember, really, really important, get your rings measured, get your fingers measured so we can have that in your file. Do I have any questions before I close up the demo? Anybody see anything? Yeah, definitely go back and review it. There's also a lot of videos online about subdivision. SubD surfaces. This is a new feature to Rhino. It was only added about a year ago. So there aren't as many, it's not part, that's why it's not part of your tutorials yet. And I like to show you guys individually what you can do with it. And myself, as a really, as a, you know, big time Rhino user, I'm still learning about how to work this. It's a totally different way of building geometry for Rhino, but it's great. It's really, really a lot of fun. No questions? Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna turn off the recording. Where's my recording? Here we go.